तुझको कितनों का लहू चाहिए ए अर्ज़े वतन, जो तेरे आरज़े बेरंग को गुलनार करें। कितने आहों से कलेजा तेरा ठंडा होगा, कितने आंसू तेरे सहरों को गुलजार करें। तेरे ऐवानों में पुरजे हुए पैमा कितने, कितने वादे जो ना आसूदा इकरार हुए। कितनी आँखों को नज़र खा गईं बदख्वाहों की, ख्वाब कितने तेरे शहरों में संसार हुए। बिला कशाने मोहब्बत पे जो हुआ सो हुआ, जो मुझ पे गुजरी मत उससे कहो हुआ सो हुआ। मबादा हो कोई जालिम तेरा गरेबान गिर, लहू के दाग को दामन से धो हुआ सो हुआ। Today is 5th August 2022. Today Kashmiris have been under siege for 1095 days. August 5 is a day of dishonor for the BJP government of Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. On this day, in 2019, Modi took an action which no previous Indian governments headed by Nehru, Vajpayee, and others had done. On this day, in a naked and shameless display of aggressive Hindu nationalism, branded as Hindutva, the Modi administration abrogated Article 370 of the Indian Constitution, which guaranteed a special status to the disputed valley within the Indian Union. This step was illegal, immoral, and fascist in nature and against the UN resolutions on Kashmir. It was a gross violation of the solemn commitment given by India at the time of partition that the normal laws of the country would not apply to the valley, and a plebiscite will be held to ascertain the will of the people. The government backed out on a signed and sealed promise to Jammu and Kashmir. By abolishing Article 370, ultra-nationalist Modi, by a stroke of pen, deprived the people of Kashmir of the autonomy they enjoyed in managing their provincial affairs. He took away the right of 8 million people to have a say in deciding their future. The annulment of the article erased the autonomous status of Indian-held Jammu and Kashmir and bifurcated the Muslim majority state into 2 union territories, with Buddhist majority Ladakh getting detached from Jammu and Kashmir. The Indian decision of revoking Article 370 came after days of uncertainty and massive military build-up in the disputed territory. Coupled with massive military build-up, a crackdown was imposed in the state by virtually cutting it off from the rest of the world, both physically and virtually. Following India's imposition of direct central rule and army crackdown in the valley, the major constraints faced by people have been as follows: cutting phone lines and the internet, detaining top political leaders, mass imprisonment, and imposition of an indefinite curfew. A day prior to abrogation of Article 370, internet shut down across the valley. It was the 51st internet shutdown over the region in a year. During the last 3 years, Kashmir Valley continues to face both internet and phone communication blockade. The United Nations Human Rights Council has termed the communication clampdown as a form of collective punishment, not permissible under international law. Internet access disruption constitutes a human rights violation according to a non-binding resolution passed by United Nations Human Rights Council in July 2016. Internet access disruption does not allow people to exercise their right to freedom of opinion and expression, which is recognized as a fundamental human right under Article 19 by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. India was among the signatories when UDHR was put to vote in 1948. Failing to abide by the declaration, which does not have its own legally binding obligations, is a source of moral and political failure for any country. Since the illegal annexation of the valley on August 5, 2019, India has let loose a reign of terror in Kashmir. More than 500 Kashmiri youth have been martyred and tens of thousands of people arrested and put in jail without trial. Indian authorities have detained hundreds of political leaders and activists, including former Indian-administered Jammu and Kashmir chief ministers, Farooq Abdullah, Umar Abdullah, and Mehbooba Mufti, and also Jammu and Kashmir Pradesh Congress Committee Chief Ravinder Sharma. According to the reports in the world media, more than 4,000 Kashmiris were detained, including political leaders, elected representatives, lawyers, activists, businessmen, and students in days leading to August 5 and afterwards. Majority of the detainees are held under a controversial Jammu and Kashmir Public Safety Act, which allows authority to book a person without a charge or trial for up to 2 years. Article 9 of both UDHR and International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights does not allow arbitrary detention. The ICCPR, which was signed in December 1966 and entered into force in March 1976, was ratified by the Indian government in April 1979. 3 years after the abrogation of Article 370, Kashmir is still under siege. Curfews continue to be declared across the valley. Kashmir, occupied by over 700,000 Indian troops, is now the most militarized region in the world. International media has been banned from covering events in Kashmir, while the most one of the most important international media platform, Amnesty International, which has highlighted the abuse of human rights in the valley, it has been asked to leave India. It is an endless tale of blood, shootings, and killings in Kashmir. The BJP government has adopted Nazi-like tactics to crush the spirit of freedom of Kashmiri people. The people of Kashmir are seething with anger and hate against the transgressions of Modi government. They are determined to overthrow the Indian oppression, whatever the cost. August 5 comes to further strengthen their determination to carry on their struggle for the right of self-determination till final victory. India's 5 August 2019 move was a deep-rooted conspiracy to rob Kashmiris of their language, history, and ethno-cultural identity. 5th August 2019 was the darkest day in Kashmir's recent history. On this day, India's apartheid regime stripped the region of its special status by holding hostage millions of Kashmiris at gunpoint. The steps taken by India on August 5, 2019 and afterwards were basically a part of a nefarious plan aimed at taking away from Kashmiris their identity, their language, their culture. All the ethno-religious communities living in Kashmir, including Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, have realized now how India was snatching away from Kashmiris their lands and reducing them to second-class citizens. Modi's government's unilateral move has undermined peace efforts in the region. War clouds are continuing to hover over the region, but today marks the day of Yom-e-Istihsal for the Kashmiris, and it is a day to show solidarity with the struggling Kashmiris. It is a day to let India know that the people of Pakistan and Azad Kashmir and occupied Kashmir will not rest till the realization of freedom. It is a day to remind India that it can't change Kashmir's disputed status through illegal moves like August 5. It is a day to expose to the world India's conspiracies against the Kashmiri people's identity. It is a day to clearly tell India that Pakistan will not leave Kashmiris alone in their struggle. It is a day to show India and the world that at every level, Pakistanis and Kashmiris are united. And August 5's illegal action has exposed India before the world as an oppressor, an aggressor, and the Modi's regime move meant to convert Muslims into a minority in Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. But Kashmiris are standing firm in their total rejection of Indian illegal occupation of their motherland. We are fighting, and we shall fight until the end, until Kashmiris' absolute freedom. Every year, August 5 comes to further strengthen our determination to carry on our struggle for the right of self-determination till the final victory. I would like to end on this note. जाने क्यों दबाई जा रही है कश्मीर की आवाज़, जाने क्यों दबाई जा रही है कश्मीर की आवाज़, मैं पूछता हूँ कहाँ उठाई जा रही है कश्मीर की आवाज़। तारिक अयूबी और कासिम को याद करो, तारिक अयूबी और कासिम को याद करो, हमसे क्यों भुलाई जा रही है कश्मीर की आवाज़। आगे बढ़ो साथ दो सरफरोशों का, आगे बढ़ो साथ दो सरफरोशों का, जाओ वहाँ जहाँ लगाई जा रही है कश्मीर की आवाज़। हम क्यों नहीं सुन पा रहे आमिर, हम क्यों नहीं सुन पा रहे आमिर, ये जो आ रही है कश्मीर की आवाज़। थैंक यू।